Today I'm speaking with Kyle Murray, the Director of School of Retailing at the University of Alberta and also a Professor of Marketing there. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm well. I'm well.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I saw your new book coming out called The American Retail Value Proposition. It's a very interesting book. Can you give us a brief bio on what the book covers?
Sure. Well, the book is intended as kind of an overview, a framework, if you will, of what the retail value proposition is in the United States, and to some extent Canada. So really, what it covers is what are the key components that you really have to craft if you want to offer your customers a compelling value proposition, something that will draw them into the stores, draw them onto the website, and hopefully command premium prices.
Okay, and of course, it's a well-known topic for everybody in retail that retail is changing drastically with the new technologies that are coming, basically being used by consumers. Really, the consumers are driving it. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's the case. And if you kind of look at it in a broader historical context, most of today's retail, the structure, the infrastructure, the technology, was built when the railroad and telegraph came into play. I mean, that was the technology that really created the current world of retail that we have. It allowed us to build these national and international brands, large chain stores, with a real focus on location and product. And new technologies have really begun to change that. And I talk about that a little bit in the book, and hopefully we'll talk about that some more today.
Okay, great. Yes. So when I looking at the book, I saw a section that you have a chapter on omnichannel retailing, for example. That is really the extension of the catalog era, right? Where the internet and online and the mobile now are really adding new channels for
Right.
retailers.
Yeah, it really is. The original catalog business came about when we could not easily get everyone who lived in the rural communities to the stores that were tended to be in major urban centers. And so catalogs were a way in the US and Canada, especially, of reaching out to those areas that weren't so urban. What's happening with omni-channel retailing is growing from kind of that base, but it's really quite different. It's not just reaching out to those people who can't easily get to a store. It's reaching out to those people who find it easier and more convenient to shop on their mobile phones or their iPads or their laptops, and in some cases even enjoy it more than going out to a physical store.
Right. Well, I mean that's the thing is you have to serve the customer where the customer wants to be served these days. And that's, I think, really what's driving all of these things.
That's right. So again, historically, a physical location could be an enormous advantage for a retailer because once you got to the store, once you got to the shopping mall, you weren't likely to get back in your car and drive across town to check the price on the same product at another store. A very small segment of customers were willing to do that. But that's changed now because you don't have that physical lock-in anymore of the retail location. Now the lock-in has to be what we've referred to as cognitive lock-in. And that is a connection to the website or interface or the brand that is driven by things like familiarity and habitual behavior, and comfort and convenience. And so it's really a very different model for retailers.
So one of the questions that I hear a lot, and it's on everybody's mind probably, is why is Amazon so successful? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into it being successful. I think probably the key things that most people point to is it was one of the earlier online retail stores, that it chose a great category in books to begin with, and that it has a founder in Jeff Bezos who was really driven and believed deeply in the power of the internet as a retailer. Even when many other people did not. And I think those things, combined with their ability to raise a lot of money in the early days, really set the stage for them to be successful.
Plus the fact that they started AWS, which is really where most of their profits are from these days. So that, the Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what they've been aggressive in trying out different categories and types of products and different technologies. And in terms of profitability, what they're doing in cloud computing is obviously having a big impact. Um, but I think that's just part of a longer term vision for what is a global retailer that now has a market valuation greater than Walmart's, even though it's relatively new.
Right. Well, I think we all know Amazon as a retailer, but there's a lot more to Amazon than just retail. So, when we talk about, I mean, it's almost like the story of Google and Alphabet now. Google was a search company, but they did so many other things. They actually created a new organization. So I'm wondering if Amazon and Mr. Bezos are at some point are going to do the same thing and really, split these different units into their own running operations. That it would be a lot easier to assess Amazon as a pure retailer if it's only doing retail than,
True, that is true.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think long term that's quite possible. It seems reasonable in terms of valuing the company and even managing the company to have it more focused on what are really quite disparate businesses. Time will tell.
Right. And now Amazon is actually starting retail stores. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a very interesting development. And I think for a long time people made this argument that you know either they were on the side of online retailing is going to take over the world, or physical retail is always going to be here. And the reality is that it's somewhere in the middle. There's always going to be some room for physical stores, and physical stores can offer some things like touching and trying on products, especially in apparel, which Amazon's getting into in more and more depth. Things like that can happen in a store that can't happen well online. At the same time, if you look at just the basic numbers, the growth of the online market versus the growth of sales in physical stores, obviously over the next 5 to 10 years, the online channel is going to continue to eat market share. But it's never an all or none situation. Right? What we're going to see is a mix. And that's why we talk about omni-channel. There's a number of different ways to reach out to customers, and physical stores are part of that. They're just a part that's likely to shrink relative to the online channel over the next decade.
Right. So yeah, there was a report that just came out, I think, last month, showing the square footage per capita in the US compared to other countries, and it's probably 4 or 5 times. I don't know, is that the same in Canada or?
Not quite. The U.S. has always had a high level of retail square footage, or if you prefer, retail intensity per capita. And part of that just reflects the affluence of the average American shopper and the high, intense level of competition among retailers. So it's not too surprising. In Europe and other parts of the world, Asia, real estate is in the urban centers is so valuable that they tend to historically work in smaller spaces. That may, as we make a transition towards the online market, that may give them a bit of an advantage. And I think we are going to see some issues around real estate over the next decade as retailers start to reduce the number of stores that they have. That it's one of the big three costs retailers face, and the online channel allows them to reduce that cost.
Right. So, for me, going shopping has always been more about the experience than the actual finding of the product. Yes, there are some times that you definitely want to find product, but for example, when I go to Barnes and Noble, I go there for the experience. For example, when I go to a mall, it's different, and that's really what is changing now, because it's becoming even more important to give consumers that experience that they can't get online.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the go-to answer for retailers is let's ramp up the experience, and give them something they can't get online. And I think to some extent that's true. I think what's more important though is we need to better understand our customers. That as retailers, we got a little lackadaisical in our approach to understanding our customers. We sort of treated them all the same. We sort of assumed that once we got them in the store, we could convert them. And I think going forward, what we need to do is just better understand what it is our customers want. So there may be customers like you who really go shopping for the experience. There may be others because it's close to their house and it's quick and easy. And there may be others who know the store manager or one of the clerks or really trust someone in the store to give them good advice. So there's a variety of reasons, and I think we have to go deeper than just kind of the blanket experience. I don't think that's the answer for everyone all the time.
Yes, I definitely agree. It depends on the product, the location. And I mean, I say that not being somebody that actually goes a lot to the mall, maybe once a month I do that. And I'm a Amazon Prime customer, a good customer of Amazon. So the thing is that when I do go, it's the experience that really, I enjoyed. For example, Sports Authority just is went out of business. I always enjoyed going there and just seeing everything in one place and trying things. So that's the part that I personally hope it's not going to go away completely, as things develop.
No, I don't think it can because, like you said, if it just becomes a store with shelves and automated checkouts and robots stacking the shelves, then you're not giving consumers in most cases a reason to go there. So it has to be more of a focus on what is it that the customer really wants, and if what they want is in a sporting store, it's often the opportunity to try out the product, to swing a baseball bat, to throw a football around, to shoot a hockey puck, whatever it might be. Do something to actually interact with the product, and that's a long way away in the digital world still. So that is an advantage for stores. I don't think they'll give that up easily.
Yeah, and I mean, technology is also like really going to places where we don't really know where it's going to go. You have a section about AR, and I just had an interview with the CEO of a company called Marksant, which is working with Lowe's to create this hollow room that people can actually use to design cabinetry for their kitchens right in the store, but something that fits into their home. Where do you think, what's the role of AR in the future?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very exciting development. I expect that AR is sort of in the same world that the internet was in the mid 90s. It's very early on. There's a lot of excitement. It's not yet clear exactly how it'll play out. But I think even the basic kind of Pokemon Go examples demonstrate that there's demand for it. Anyone who's tested it or used AR, whether it's the Microsoft HoloLens or some other version, they come away from it excited about it. And really, to a large extent, we're already using AR when we shop with our phones or other devices. So, to be honest, AR is already here in a small way. I expect it to grow over the next decade or so. And I think that will change the way we're able to interact with products. You still might not be able to feel that sweater, but when it comes to things like seeing what a product looks like up close and interacting by moving it around, we're not very far away from that. There's a retailer in Canada that does something very similar to what you just mentioned, which is uses AR to allow people in a store to build their patio for their house. So they can choose wood and kind of design it and other things that they're going to use in building that patio, and they can set that all out and then have it ordered and shipped to their house. So, but they do it in store. And that's the question: are we going to be doing it at home? Or are we going to be doing it in store? Um, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think ultimately, we have to give the choice, or the retailers have to give the choice to consumers to serve them where it makes sense. And For example, something that's really popular right now is basically following the consumer on their different devices. So if they start a transaction on their laptop, don't make them go through the same process when they log in on the mobile app. It's the same concept, is help me when I'm at home, and do even more if I do come to the store, make it worthwhile for me to actually make that the trip. But I think the concept of AR is very interesting in how things are going to evolve for retailers.
Yeah, undoubtedly, it's the future. It's just a question of how intense it will be. So things like being able to get product information by scanning a barcode while you're in the store, that we can already do. And it's a type of AR. It allows you to go into cyberspace while you're standing in a physical store. Will we get to the point where we're wearing glasses that make the retail store a combination of physical store and online store? So when products are out of stock, we can kind of still pick them off the shelf and order them. Those kinds of things remain to be seen.
Right. So this the concept of the cognitive lock-in was very interesting that you mentioned. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. The basic idea is that a lot of what we do when we shop online or bank online or look for information online is habitual and automated. And the more successful websites, the more successful online retailers or mobile retailers are the ones that make it very easy. And we've talked about Amazon a little already. One of the interesting things they did was very little in terms of changing their interface for a long, long time. Even as technology changed, they kept an interface for online shopping that was very similar to what they used in the early days. And that kind of consistency and familiarity allows the online retailer to build, or electronic retailer to build, that brand connection faster. And it tends to lock people in because once we get comfortable and quick at using a particular interface to buy the products we want to buy, we're very hesitant to switch to a different online store. And this is quite different than what people thought early on. So in the early days of online shopping, we assumed that we would just click from store to store to store very quickly and buy the product at the lowest price. And what we've seen is, in fact, the exact opposite, that just a few large brands are getting the vast majority of online sales, with Amazon well in the lead. So cognitive lock-in is kind of locking people in to high levels of familiarity and mental habits of using a particular interface to shop, rather than a physical location that they've driven to and are locked in because they don't want to leave.
Okay. Yeah, I think the familiarity part is really important. And this is something that, when you're in the tech field, one of the things that retailers are constantly probably getting pitched at with providers is you need to upgrade your entire experience. And every 3-4 years, you need to upgrade it. And I think the example of Amazon tells you that it's not necessarily the imagery and everything. It's actually sometimes even better not to make customers relearn your entire interface again.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think you can make small changes that make it even easier. So when Amazon introduces a one-click technology, or they start to add personalized recommendations, but they don't change the way you interact with the website dramatically. They just kind of tweak it here and there. And I do think a lot of retailers make the mistake of completely revamping their website on a regular basis. And that actually makes it hard to shop. It's like the analogy is like taking your physical store and completely changing where all the products are in all the aisles. And if you think about the extreme example, like a grocery store, you would lose a lot of customers if you completely rearrange your store every couple of years. People would be frustrated with it. And it is the same sort of thing online.
Yeah, that's definitely a lesson to be taken from Amazon there, among many other lessons, of course.
Right.
So now you also touch on and discuss dynamic pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Dynamic pricing is a concept that is not new, but it is becoming really dynamic in the age of the internet. What are your thoughts on that, and what's happening on that front?
Yeah, I mean, dynamic pricing is really a basic microeconomic concept of trying to charge what people are willing to pay for the product you're selling at a particular point in time. So the classic example are airline tickets. I think American Airlines, they change their prices something like 100,000 times a day. Right? They're constantly tweaking the price to try and make sure that they get the maximum value out of every airline seat that they sell. And retailers are trying to do similar things where they're constantly tweaking the price based on all kinds of variables. It could be the customer, it could be the time of day, it could be the location of the store, and trying to make sure that they maximize their revenue. And in general, theoretically, that makes a lot of sense. But if you think about it as kind of from a personal perspective, the big risk for a lot of retailers there is damaging the relationship. In that, if you find out you had to pay 20% more to download a movie than I did, or you find out that that box of Tide that you ordered cost you 10% more than it cost me, you might start to get upset with that. And we do see that in the airline example. I mean, airlines are good at yield management, at trying to maximize revenue, but people, their customers, tend to dislike them. And the dynamic pricing approach is a big part of it. So for retailers, clearly dynamic pricing is part of what we're going to be doing in the future. But I think we have to be careful to not damage the customer relationship chasing a few more pennies on the transaction.
Right. I think that's an earlier, I mean, a more recent example of that also is like Uber and surge pricing, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. I think the Uber example is a little bit, I mean, people still get frustrated with it. It's a little bit better than what others are doing because at least if it's surge pricing, it's not just for you, right? It's not, you're not only being charged twice as much and the guy getting in an Uber beside you is getting charged the regular price. Um, so it's a little more fair and it's a little more transparent in that it's demand based. But yeah, I think those kinds of things, or another recent example was Disney changing the way it charges for tickets at its parks based on demand, and that can frustrate people as they show up at the park and find out it costs 50% more than they were expecting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's technologies also being used right now in even pushing that even further, like in-cart pricing offers in the cart. Like customers put that item in the cart and they don't complete the purchase, and retailers are actually starting to offer them discounts to make the purchase, to complete the purchase. So this is, uh, I don't know, where the end is, but it's basically it's getting really aggressive and innovative.
Yeah, I think the most successful retailers, most successful businesses in the world tend to think about uh, pricing and their business in terms of the long-term customer value. So they won't try to squeeze somebody for a penny here and there at risk of the long-term relationship. And what's happening with the way some pricing is happening, for example, when people put it in their cart but don't buy it, and then get a coupon or a discount, is that you're putting your customer into a game with you. So now the two of you are playing a game because people quickly realize that. I was just talking to somebody tomorrow who said, "Yeah, I put some stuff in my cart. Now I'm waiting for them to give me a discount." And I don't think that if what you're really after is a sustainable business in the long term, you want to get into a situation of a constant pricing game, competitive pricing game with your customers. I can see, the thought behind it was, well, they're thinking about buying it. Let's give them some incentive. But long term, I think that's a slippery slope.
Right. You're really training your customers in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you're making it kind of an adversarial game where you're saying, let's see if we can maximize the money that we get from you on this transaction and maximize the revenue that we create by getting people who maybe are on the fence to buy. But your customers aren't dumb. They're going to quickly learn that that's the way you're dealing with pricing. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to talk on message boards. And you're going to be in a situation where you're no longer working with your customers. Your customers aren't your advocates. They're people that are competing with you to see who can get the best deal. And that I think for most companies is not where you want to be.
Right. Well, I know we're over the time that I had promised, but this topic is so interesting, and you're so full of really valuable information. Um, One question that I have is, what do you think is the future of humans in retail?
Well, that's actually a big question because what it leads to is what is the future of humans in work in general, right? Not just retail, but all kinds of work. What kinds of work can a robot not do, or software not do? And I think for a lot of people that the answer to that in the really long term, 20, 30, 40 years is probably pretty scary. In the short term, I think we're going to see it slowly being introduced. And as we see more pressure on retail costs, they're going to offset some of that pressure with technology that automates the human component. And if you think about it from a theoretical perspective, retailers have three big costs. They have their inventory, they have their stores or their physical locations or whatever channel they're selling through, their websites. And the other one that they have are the people that work for them. And one way to reduce costs is to eliminate any of those things. So if you can eliminate stores and go online, you tend to reduce costs. And if you can eliminate the people in your stores and use technology as a replacement, you tend to eliminate costs. I think there is a point where we're going to feel uncomfortable shopping, in a robot-based store. But that's, it's been coming for a long time. The original founder of the Piggly Wiggly chain that kind of first took groceries from behind the counter and put them out into the store. After he did that and revolutionized grocery retailing, his next goal was a robotic store. He never got there, but we're getting closer to that now. So in the really long term, we will see more and more things automated and less need for basic kind of simple tasks being completed by people. In the short term, I think that'll be difficult. And one interesting case study to look at is the grocery industry and online retailing. Groceries are one case where we should have seen a real big push into online sales. That's a market that should have been dominated by online sales. Given that most people don't like to do it, that delivery to your home is a big advantage, and it turns out that that's not the case. We don't easily switch our habits, and I don't think we'll easily switch to robot-based stores in the short term. In the long term, it's probably inevitable.
Right. Well, who knows? Maybe robots will just be selling to each other in the future.
Well, the beautiful version of that future would be one in where we spend our time on leisure activities and technology takes care of all the work that we'd rather not do anyway. If that's the case, that would be wonderful. I think there's certainly some negative potential though as well.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of like the PR spin that robots are already putting into our minds.
Yes, that's what
Don't worry, it's all
yes.
going to be nice. You'll all be on the beaches drinking Coronas.
That's right.
This is very interesting. I really appreciate it. One last thing is that the concept of having a school of retailing is very interesting for me because there's not many of them around, and I know so. What exactly do you teach, and who are your students at the program there?
So we're part of a larger school of business, and there's 2,000 undergraduate students and about 500 or 600 master's students. And we teach those students who are interested in going into retail. One of the reasons that I wrote the book, The American Retail Value Proposition, was I wanted to have an entry point for young executives, young store managers, or others who haven't been in the industry long to kind of learn about the broad industry. Because one of the things that happens is if you work in retail, you tend to learn your job very well, and maybe even your industry very well, but you don't get a broad understanding of what it's like if you work in apparel to be in hardware. And you don't get an understanding if you work in the store maybe of what it's like to be in logistics. And so I wanted that book to really cover the overall value proposition. And that's really what the school does as well. We try to teach students about the general field of retailing. We give them some of the basic skills and things from omnichannel retailing to category management to marketing and HR. But the idea is we're not going to teach you how to be a great grocer or a great apparel retailer. We're going to teach you the broad fundamentals of retail with some specific skills, and then you can go out and be of value to all kinds of different retailers. And that's really what the School of Retailing does. And the other side of it is we just promote retail as a career because a lot of people will come to a business school or university wanting to be an accountant or go into finance. In the back of their minds, they know they enjoy retail and they like the industry, but they don't see it as a long-term career. Maybe their parents don't see it as a long-term career. So part of our role is really a public relations role where we promote and advance careers in retailing as something that university-educated people can and should pursue.
I think it's a very, very great purpose that you're doing. I hope more universities would do this because retail is a great career. It's a fun industry to be in, and I just hope that you get more and more students. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate your time. And is the book is actually published now?
It is. The book is now available on Amazon and in bookstores across North America.
Okay, great. Again, the name of the book is The American Retail Value Proposition by Professor Kyle Murray. And look forward to hearing more and more developments as things grow over there.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Kyle. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.